Hello again, everybody. Today I'm back at Miller Creek. Today, instead of wandering around, kind of just figuring things out and just feeling out the area for what might be available to photograph, today I want to focus in on photographing the moving water with some slow exposure photography using a neutral density filter today on my Kodak P-850. The Kodak P-850 features a 5.1 megapixel CCD sensor paired with a 12x zoom lens from an average 36 millimeter starting point to a fairly generous zoom, which I think is about 432 millimeter. I could be wrong. I don't pay attention to the specifics too much. It's not super wide angle by any means, which is okay. This Kodak also features, as I have emphasized in previous videos, a metal tripod mount, which I think is very important, but not always necessary. It features a hot shoe up here, which I have a cover on right now. It features a full selection of modes on the camera, including aperture priority, shutter, program, manual, custom settings, in addition to auto and scene. Decent screen. Not the highest resolution, but I don't always rely on my screen in the back for focusing. I rely on just good old-fashioned intuition, and it has a nice jog dial here and a zoom lever. Overall, it's a pretty nice camera from Kodak. Part of their performance or P line of cameras. As I mentioned earlier, today my focus is on using long exposures to capture that blurry water effect that pros use often in waterfalls and ocean photography with water, and even in clouds, which are technically water. Slow exposure photography can be very rewarding. Now, an asset, or I should say what I find very important in this type of photography, is a neutral density filter. You can see how dark that is compared to the background of my hand, and see how much that alters what the lens reads with the sensor. You put that right on front of your camera. In this case, it's a 55 millimeter Hoya ND x8, one of my favorite slow exposure photography filters on my Kodak. That's step one. Next step is to find a composition, and I will continue. Walking down from the location from just a moment ago, I have identified my composition. I'm pointing to it right now. It's the cluster of leaves extending above the water line in the creek. I'm going to get my camera set up with the tripod, and then I'm going to zoom into that area and focus in on just that area, those two clumps of leaves. Probably focusing on the leaves closer to the camera than further away. So while I was getting my camera turned on, of course, with the cold weather, what happens is older lithium-ion batteries don't perform as well. And when you get a camera from 2004, 2005-ish, any old lithium-ion battery that's been used, they die in the cold. So I put the battery back in, and I'm hoping now that it will work. This is what happens as a photographer. Here we go. See if it works. It worked. I had my camera set up earlier for everything I'd like it to be set up for, including the file type. So now I have to redo all that because the battery died. I'm going to select the raw file format today, and I am going to go over to my sharpness, and I want to increase my sharpness. Kodak cameras from this era typically didn't have the best color sharpness. And then I'm going to go over to my next menu over to the right and select low color. My composition is now framed, as you can see, within the screen. Before I go any further, I want to mention one other thing. As you can see here on my screen, it indicates that the flash is on. This means the flash will activate for the exposure. And for long exposure photography such as this, that's a no-no. So I'm going to go up to this. I'm going to go to my options. I'm going to go to my joystick toggle and turn off my flash. The flash on will impact the exposure parameters as well, so that needs to come off. Before my battery dies on my camera, I want to make sure that I show this whole process. I turned the dial on my camera to manual because I wanted to be able to adjust my exposure time and my aperture and my ISO or ASA. And as I mentioned, that just refers to light sensitivity. Now that I'm in manual mode, I can adjust my aperture and my shutter speed. I'm sorry about the focus too. I'm using my camera on my phone. So I have my aperture set at f.8. That's set. So I use my jog dial. I go over to my exposure. And for most of these things during morning daylight, I think my exposure should be about 2 seconds. We'll start at about 2 seconds with an N8 filter on. ISO 100 needs to be changed to. I'm going to pop that. Once my camera turns back on, this is part of the fun with this old camera too. I have to go over to my ISO, and I'm putting that sucker down to 50. This has a great low sensitivity of 50 for landscapes. Alright. Next step is to adjust, not to adjust so much as to select in an exposure with the self timer. Whoopsie doodles. Not used to doing this. And I did it again. Exit review. I'm gonna go to my drive, which is also for self. Oh my gosh, I'm terrible at this. Drive, toggle, 2-second delay so I can have the tripod steady before I walk away. Have to press the shutter for exposure. Countdown. Let's see what happens. So in that last shot, I totally forgot that soon that the camera restarted itself and it went back to its full wide angle zoom position. So I got an exposure at wide angle, which I'll put up on this video at some point. And then now I'm going to zoom it in and frame it like I had originally before the camera decided to shut off on me. Same exposure settings, 2-second exposure, f8, ISO 50. For my third exposure here, I zoomed in even further within the zoom range of the lens to really emphasize that foreground clump of leaves with the snow on it. Same settings, 2-second timer. For my next composition, I decided to move back up the trail where I had entered a bit ago. And I want to focus on some faster moving water because I think this will give the water more of that blurred out look that I'm looking for. And there goes my camera again. Time to reset everything. After the camera turning off on about 10 times, I think I got this time. Or not. No worth this time. We're having luck. Luck. Let's see what happens. Come on, Kodak. Excellent. My original intent was to photograph a wide-angle perspective of the creek where I've been doing other exposures, but unfortunately, and to my dismay, my camera's battery died and it proceeded to turn on and off of its own volition numerous times. So instead, I decided to spend a moment and explain the importance of organic matter such as these leaves in a creek or any water body. Oftentimes this time of year you see leaves in piles on the side of the road. People take them out of the yards and then they wonder where the nutrients went. Well, these leaves provide nutrients to the soil, to other organisms, to the whole system in general. They go downstream, floating. That's what they do. Nature doesn't blow them into a neat little pile at this trailhead for everyone to pick up. It just does its own thing. Gonna start packing up. This not moving stuff in this cooler freezing weather starts to get to you after a while. Gotta get the filters back into their case. Thanks for watching, and of course, as always, please subscribe and please share this channel and these videos with others. Again, I'd love to grow this channel and make it into something more. Thanks for watching again, and until next time, get outside and enjoy some fresh air.